attention to with the attorney. I hate to say that.
Well, I don't
But
think it's,
God forbid we crossed somebody didn't get notified and then they came out with a lawsuit.
well,
It's a
this
great
is an
idea.
application to the board, even though it's for a conditional use permit, and by
If we're
676.4, you have to, there are rules on applications. And this is designed based on 676.4, which says that you do have to notify stuff, because that's the one that covers all the different applications to a board, whether it's a subdivision application or anything. So there's certain minimum state requirements on notifying people, and I don't know if you can get around notifying abutters.
Yeah.
That's not a question I can answer. I don't ask the lawyer. Sorry. Yes?
No, like you were saying, if the abutters move, if that information changes, it has to be up to
Oh,
date.
yeah, if somebody
because-
dies.
Yeah, so it has to be very recent.
Or a lot changes ownership.
Well, doesn't the tax assessor have all that information is up to date anyway?
Yep.
For tax bills, so it's kind of
Yep.
a given.
I'll make a motion that we accept these changes to the working document.
I'll second.
Any objections? I mean, before we have a second,
No.
so now we can discuss it. Sorry, I forgot the procedure. So we have a second, so
Yes.
you had a question?
Yeah, I just had a question about the first one on
Yes.
number 7,
Number 7.
5-7.
Yep.
Or, I'm sorry, not 5-7. It says the planning board reserves the right to require conditions on any approval brought before it. So, how do you come to that conclusion? If you're gonna, you have the right to require conditions.
Ooh,
What does
I
that
had trouble
actually
with
mean?
that.
grammar.
No, I had trouble.
No,
with
I
that.
mean with that.
I know, I had trouble with that too. But I think what they're saying is that if we want to add conditions, we can.
I think that's what the intent was. I think that this got garbled in transmission.
Okay, because I looked at that too.
It might be better to change that language before we vote on it to something more along the lines of the board reserves the right to apply conditions to any approval.
To
that's-
apply.
Conditions.
Then we can apply conditions
On
to,
any application going forward.
right.
Existing conditions may be expanded if the applicant requests, and you can add more if the applicant comes back and asks for a renewal.
Just put require specific conditions, that says it.
I mean, are we pulling this like right out of a hat? I mean, what's...
No, this is all part of the state law, that we can put conditions on any application, that an application isn't considered complete and done until all the conditions that are put on upon the board are met. So whether it's a conditional use permit or an application for subdivision or anything, that's essentially saying that, like for one that came up not long ago, I believe we did, was it Johansson, was it 2 years ago? The subdivision, we said it's not official until you get the driveway permit
It's
from Wakefield.
conditionally approved.
Conditionally approved, and then they had to make sure they finished their little checklist of items, and then they got back to us and we're all set.
But those are conditions, this conditional approval, not conditions on the application.
Those are standard conditions, standard requirements that we just conditionally approved.
Is the intent, is
I
the,
withdraw my motion.
Okay.
No, we're just for discussion.
Yeah, no, but I withdrew it.
Well,
is the intent of this item to say, to just make it clear that if the application is approved, it's going to come with, it may very well come with conditions. Is that what the intent is? Or is the intent that the board may just make up some additional conditions before the application is considered complete and it's accepted? Is this conditions on the application or conditions on the approval?
This is conditions on the approval. What you said the first time there, that if the board, when the point gets, I mean, remember this is the instructions section. Just letting the person know that if they get an approval for this conditional use permit, there can be conditions on it. Conditions on the approval of the conditional use permit. Saying that before this is...
No, require conditions to the...
I had it.
Conditional use.
Can
To
I
the
make a
use.
suggestion?
Yes, George.
If the word on, replace it with for.
I think the word specific between
Yes, that's-
require and conditions.
George is right.
Require conditions for.
They're going to require conditions no matter what, but specific with
Can
Define
I
it as to-
throw out a suggestion?
applicable to the
Yes.
particular.
Planning board reserves the right to add conditions for any approval brought before it.
I think that clarifies it nicely.
I think we could go further to clarify that, because this is, if you read through this, it's all about the application. It's application, application, application. All of a sudden, we've shifted gears to approval. And
But if you word it that way, reserves the right to add conditions for any approval. That is telling somebody that there are conditions that they may have to go through or do before they can gain the approval.
And if they come back for a renewal,
And it
there
wouldn't
could be
be,
more conditions.
it's not implying that they've got to, it's not implying a conditional approval situation. It's saying, you want to do this? Well, in order to do this, we want you to do that.
Well, I like the word specific.
How do we come up with the conditions? I'm just confused about that. Like, how do you come?
Well, there's
Because
two
you
different
just don't like
conditions
the
we're
person,
talking
so
about
you just
here.
make-
We're talking about conditional uses, which is the land use. And since we're using that same word conditions, conditions on the application would be conditions that they have to fulfill as part of the process. You maybe have to do a site plan review, or maybe you have to get maps, but not do a site plan review, or maybe you have to bring in a soils engineer, depending on the
Well,
situation.
I would be thinking more like, what did we authorize them to be open till midnight?
Yeah,
Yeah,
whatever it is.
Noise.
Yeah.
Midnight noise.
Now,
yeah,
if he applies for a conditional use that is extremely noisy, we may say, you can do that, but you
10
need to
o'clock.
stop it at 10, 11 or something rather than the 12.
You
So-
can't have more than 100 people because your septic can't support more than 100 people.
So as a board, you're coming up with these conditions.
Oh,
At
that's
the time.
that's exactly.
So
that's
if the
exactly
board,
what we're doing.
if he comes up for a renewal and the board is a completely different board and they want to be completely strict and change all the conditions, they can do that.
They can do that. There's nothing we can do really to tie their
make
hands.
Or if he abuses the permit, then you could reel it in. Is that the reason? Okay. I understand.
or it may not be his abuse. It may be that a board is very lean and puts no conditions.
That would be the selectmen that
And
stop abuse.
well, I mean, somebody could have, we could have said, you know what, you can, be open for business 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that would have been fine. And he could be doing that. And it could actually turn out that, at 3 a.m, the neighbors are kind of unhappy.
Didn't we try that last year and got sued for it? With the original Moose Mountain thing?
Maybe.
Maybe. The
So I think that, there's a case where he's not necessarily being abused. He may be following the letter of what was approved, but in retrospect, it may be been a bad idea to approve that, right? And
Or the butter didn't like it, or somebody else.
or it just didn't work out the right way.
It's literally just to protect the.
now the problem is that the good news is with the conditional uses, every year you can tweak it, but with the permitted uses, you can't tweak it every year. It's like once he's got approval to be open a certain number of hours, a certain number of days, a certain number of people, whatever the conditions might have been, you can't take that away from him. That's never up for review again.
Not ever.
Now, he could always come back. We could, the board could be conservative and say, lock it down. And it's like, if things go well, come back next year and ask us to, loosen it up. But once it's loosened, there's no process for tightening it down.
I think one of the good examples in there, in the list of conditional uses, I believe one of the ones I liked was tractor pulls. Because I consider tractor pulls to be like a good country fair event, where you've got everybody out there and they're pulling their things. I just enjoy watching those things. Call me a bumpkin. But
You're a pumpkin.
I'm a bumpkin.
At a fair.
But you might say, that's got a good point there, Rick, is that it's at a fairground. A tractor pull, sometimes it's just, me and my John Deere pulling a sled across the yard. Or it could be somebody with a modified thing that shoots cool flames out of it and is horrendously loud. And if you happen to know the acoustics of that mountain, if you burp on that mountain, it echoes all the way up to Stoneham Corners. So a loud engine might not work out. So that's kind of the idea of, I happen to like tractor pulls.
We've been listening to that for a long time.
But the point is that, with the conditions of the use could be that, okay, this was a good idea because we thought it was going to be a great idea, but it just didn't work out the way we thought it was going to work out. So some future board could, if the initial permit was issued for a year or 6 months or 5 years, who knows what. That's all flexible, so the future board could just determine that. So.
Okay, so let's get back to the word.
Right, so back to the wording. We've thoroughly beaten that one. Okay.
So back to number 7. What did we decide?
Well, we had some suggestions. We didn't vote on anything. Now, Ed, you withdrew your motion, correct?
Right.
Okay, so that is off the table.
Well, I think George had a good point. The planning board reserves the right to require conditions for any approval brought before it.
No, approvals are not brought before the planning board.
Applications. are brought before the board.
I suggest that, Tom, why don't you take a whack before the next meeting at writing what you actually meant to say.
Yeah, this one just got garbled.
So, I move that we accept the changes with the exception of
Number 7.
number 7 on page 2 of 5. To the working document.
Second.
Just as a point of discussion, let's just double check, read those real fast, make sure we don't find anything we don't like.
You can always change it later.
Yeah, we always can.
That's right.
I think number 10 could be rewritten as well.
Yeah, I do too. Did you say the assessor clerk is required to certify by signing the application? Certify all voters by signing the application?
Maybe you should just withdraw the motion, take it back and make your changes and bring it back up for approval the next time.
No, these were changes suggested by other people.
Well, you're stuck with them now, though.
I think number 10's got an issue too.
I withdraw the motion.
Okay. So we need to redo number 7 and number 10.
Unclear.
You know what, abutters, including out-of-town abutters that are adjacent to the property.
Yeah, you don't need to say that. Just abutters is fine.
Yeah, and I think that there should be a codicil anyway, another one, or there are certain circumstances that someone might come before them. Okay, you talked about a tractor trailer burping in the mountain. Some things, for instance, 5,000 people coming up Moose Mountain to have a function of some kind doesn't just affect the guy next to Moose Mountain, it affects the whole hill. And it is, under certain circumstances, the board may require them to notice the people in the traffic thoroughfare if that were going to be the application that would affect everybody on the hill.
I remember reading something about that just recently. They talk about regional impact.
That's right.
If you were putting in something like a utility station,
Yep.
like a Seabrook nuclear power plant, you definitely have to notify many of the abutting towns around you, not just your
Well,
neighbors.
we're not looking at that
But you
grandiose
can get the
concept,
idea.
but it's the same theory. That you will notice the abutters if it's a very small impact. If it's a much greater impact, you may be obligated to, at that juncture, to say you have to notify the people that are affected in a gross manner, and they define gross manner in the RSAs. Because I went through this just recently, it was interesting, on the lake. I'm building this project on the lake, and I had to notice people that were not abutters. They're across the water, some of them were on the street, but 5 houses down, because they're affected by what we're doing there. Land impact use and all that shit, land use impact. So, that might be put in there in some fashion, I don't know.
So you're looking for greater specificity, saying when and when not to.
Yes, I mean, I don't know, we'd have to think about how to word that, but
Covering a larger geographic area.
you may have to. Depends on the circumstances, the board would determine that.
Well, that could be one of the conditions.
Yep.
I'd hate to see it be put in there that way. I think you should just put abutters,
Okay.
because the state is very specific who an abutter is.
And we use the state definition. So,
Right.
yeah.
And then if we think if it's a borderline regional impact, then that could be a condition.
All right.
672.3 has the
You butter?
abutter.
Yes.
Abutter means any person whose property is located in New Hampshire and adjoins or is directly across the street or stream from the land under consideration by the local land use board. For purposes of receiving testimony only and not for purposes of notification, the term abutter shall include any person who is able to demonstrate that his land will be directly affected by the proposal under consideration. For purposes of receipt of notification by a municipality of a local land use board hearing, in the case of an abutting property being under a condominium or other collective form of ownership, the term abutter means the officers of the collective or association as defined in RSA 356B3, blah, blah, blah. For purposes